Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, first, I want to thank you and all the men and women of the FBI for what you do every day to keep us safe. I also want to extend my condolences, my sympathy to the families of Special Agent Alphen and Special Agent Schwarzenberger, who were shot and killed while serving a warrant in Sunrise, Florida, just south of my district. I also, Director Wray, would like to just follow up on some of the things that you've touched on today. First of all, you said just a little while ago that 9/11 was why you returned to public service. And I just wanted to follow up on that. The 9/11 community, as you know, Director Wray, has asked the FBI to conduct a full and complete declassification review of all documents related to the September 11th attacks. It has been nearly 20 years now since that horrific day. And these families, the American people, I think, deserve this. And so I would just ask whether you will commit to conducting a full and complete declassification review.
We are working very hard on trying to declassify as much information as we can and to share as much information as we can. I understand why this is frustrating to any number of families. And we will commit to continuing to try to provide as much information as we responsibly can.
I would urge you to pursue a full declassification review. I want to just follow up on your responses, both to Chairman Nadler and to Mr. Cohen about the Norfolk memo. You said that we tried to make sure the information got to the right people. You said you tried 3 ways. You emailed it to Capitol Police. You did a verbal briefing in command post, including Capitol Police, and that you used the law enforcement portal that all law enforcement partners have access to. You then went on to tell Mr. Cohen that the information arrived essentially, I think you said, the night or afternoon before January 6th, and was promptly passed on, but it was raw, unverified. We decided that even though it was raw and unverified, we needed to pass it on to all of our partners, which you did. You didn't explain, and I would ask you to explain what happened next. Well, you passed it on, and what did you do to follow up with this really important information about what may take place the next day in the United States Capitol?
Well, I'm not sure that there's specific investigative activity that I could discuss. I think the point of passing this information on, we didn't know what to make of it, and that's why I emphasized that it was raw, unverified information without a specific identity attached to it. But the judgment was made, which is not the way we prefer to have to do things, but given the framing of the information, we decided out of an abundance of caution to pass it on to and sometimes when there's a reference to the email, it's important to understand we're talking about their chosen representatives on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the whole purpose of which is to keep people in the loop. Yes?
I understand. I understand that's their purpose. You had a memo that said that the report that detailed online posts said that individuals in Washington were ready for war at the Capitol, called for it talked about potential for violence in Washington, D.C. in connection with planned Stop the Steal protest on January 6th. That's what was in the memo. I know you passed it on. What did you do once you passed it on? And I'm asking the question because we're not we don't know what the answer is. We know that this was out there. We don't know whether you did anything other than pass it on through these channels, and it was damning enough information, certainly it seems in retrospect, that though raw, you would have then followed up to make sure that every step was followed once you passed on the information. So what happened after you passed it on?
Well, I guess the way we look at it is we passed it on not 1, not 2, but 3 different ways in order to make sure that it got through to the people who needed to have that information to exercise their responsibilities to engage in the physical security, which is not what we do. I may be missing the point of your question.
I think so. Director Wray, respectfully, I think you are. When you say it's not your responsibility to ensure physical security, you had this memo that foretold or at least suggested what might happen. And I'm going to finish with this, Director Wray. The reason this is so upsetting to me in particular is because it just reminds me too much of the two tips that the FBI got before the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. One to someone in Mississippi who saw a troubling YouTube comment. The other after receiving a 13-minute-long voicemail with troubling details about the shooter. That was closed as having said there was no lead value. I understand you thought that this was worth passing on, but it seems like there should have been more than simply saying, it was the night before, it came in late, we just passed it on through our channels. That's all we really have
gentleman,
responsibility to do. I yield back. Thank you, Mr.